Have you ever tried to imagine true silence? Not just the quiet of a library, but a silence so profound it feels like the world is holding its breath. For millions of years, that silence had a kingdom. At the top and bottom of our world, our planet has worn a crown of ice. A vast, seemingly eternal landscape of white, stretching further than any empire, glittering under a sun that never sets or a night that never ends. This isn't just frozen water. It's a foundation, a solid, dependable stage upon which an entire, unique drama of life has played out for millennia. We've all seen the images, haven't we? The lone polar bear, a majestic icon adrift on a shrinking shard of ice. A seal, poking its whiskered face through a perfectly carved hole in the ice, a vital window to the air above. These are the familiar faces of the Arctic and Antarctic. For them, the ice is everything. It is a hunting ground, a nursery, and a fortress. This solid world is inextricably linked to a microscopic one, where sunlight filtering through the ice ignites vast, invisible gardens of algae. This is the very bottom of the food chain, the first breath of life that fuels the krill, which in turn feed the fish, the seals, and ultimately the great polar bears. But that world is vanishing. The silence is being broken by the groan and crack of ancient ice surrendering to a warmer world. Satellite images, sped up over years, show a terrifying retreat. It looks like a living thing recoiling, the white expanses fracturing into a million pieces and dissolving into the dark water. We watch this with a sense of profound loss, a feeling of ecological grief for a world that is fading before our eyes. Feels like an ending, the closing credits on one of Earth's most magnificent and brutal epics. This is where the story should end, with an empty ocean, a ghost of a former world. But what if it isn't an ending at all? What if it's just the end of a chapter? As the ancient ice melts, it's not leaving an empty void. It is pulling back a curtain that has been closed for longer than human history. And what's stepping onto the stage is stranger, older, and far more alien than we could have ever dared to imagine. The familiar rules are being erased, and a new, unsettling game is about to begin. Think about what that ice truly is. It's not just frozen seawater. It's a time capsule. Every layer holds dust from ancient volcanoes, trapped bubbles of prehistoric air, and something else. It holds life, microscopic beings, spores, and viruses, frozen in time, suspended in a state that is neither life nor death, waiting. Some of these ice sheets are over a kilometer thick, with layers at the bottom that last tasted liquid water hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of years ago. We are not just melting ice. We are unlocking a planetary crypt. So, this isn't just a story about loss. It's a story of an awakening. As the cold, fresh meltwater pours into the salty ocean, as sunlight touches seabeds that have been in absolute darkness since before our species existed, a change is beginning. It's a change in chemistry, in temperature, in the very nature of the water itself. It is a signal broadcasting out into the abyss. And in the crushing, silent darkness of the deep, something is stirring. Something is listening. The world we knew is dying, yes, but a new one is being born from its cold ashes. So the great thaw begins. As the ice recedes, it exposes the ocean to the sky. What happens next should be simple, a process we've seen countless times across the world's oceans. When sunlight and nutrients mix in the water, life explodes. Scientists expected to see green. They were waiting for the satellite images to show the polar seas blushing with the soft, vibrant green of phytoplankton blooms, the engine of the marine food web. It would be a sign that the old system, though wounded, was trying to restart. A green signal for hope, maybe. But the images that came back showed a different color. A color that doesn't belong. Streaks, then vast, swirling patches of a deep, unsettling crimson. It didn't look like an ecosystem coming to life. It looked like the ocean was bleeding. Spreading from the edges of the melting glaciers, this tide of red began to conquer the polar sea, a stain that grew larger and darker with each passing day. The initial thought was a red tide, a familiar, toxic algal bloom. But when the first robotic probes dipped beneath the surface, what they found was far stranger. This wasn't algae. It wasn't even technically bacteria. It was something else entirely, a form of life from a different branch of existence. Archaea. These are the planet's ultimate survivors, single-celled organisms that are considered some of the most ancient life forms on Earth. They thrive where nothing else can, in boiling volcanic vents, in water so salty it would kill anything else, and in the crushing pressure of the deep sea. And, as it turns out, they thrive in the freezer. They had been waiting, dormant in the ice for millennia, for this exact moment. The melting glaciers created the perfect storm for them. It wasn't just the change in temperature. It was the flood of ancient minerals and dissolved gases that hadn't been part of the ocean's chemistry for eons. For the familiar phytoplankton, this new environment was poison. But for these extremophilic archaea, it was a feast. They were consuming the ghosts of a prehistoric world, metabolizing ancient iron and sulfur, and multiplying at a rate that defied all models. They were not restarting the old food web. They were building a new one, an alien one, from the ground up. And then came the polar night. As darkness descended for months, the mystery deepened into something more akin to horror. This crimson tide didn't just sit there in the blackness. It began to glow. On the darkest nights, the ocean itself would pulse with a faint, deep red bioluminescence. Imagine flying over the pole and seeing not a black void, but a living, breathing network of veins, glowing with a sinister light against the ice. The ocean was alive, and it had a new, alien heartbeat. A spectacle this grand and this energetic cannot go unnoticed. An explosion of life on this scale is like setting off a flare in the dark. It is a dinner bell being rung across the single largest and least explored habitat on our planet, the deep ocean. The light may be faint to our eyes, but in the absolute blackness of the abyss, it's a beacon. And when you light a bonfire this big in the middle of Earth's darkest wilderness, you have to ask yourself, what kind of things exactly will be drawn to the flames? A beacon of life, glowing red in the polar darkness. A dinner bell for the deep. The question was never if something would answer the call, but what. To find out, we have to go down. We follow the trail of the crimson tide, sending our robotic eyes, our remotely operated vehicles, into the soupy, red-tinged water. The descent is disorienting. The ROV's powerful lights, which normally cut through the dark for hundreds of feet, struggle to penetrate the thick bloom of archaea. It's like diving into a cloud of rust, a world tinted in shades of blood and shadow. Down we go, past the familiar depths where fish dart and squid hunt. The water pressure mounts, a silent, crushing force. The red glow of the archaea fades as we sink below the sunlit zone, and the only light is what we bring with us. It's here, in the twilight zone, that the sonar starts to get strange. It's picking up targets, things moving in the darkness just beyond our lights. But they're huge, too huge, and they're moving slowly, deliberately, with a grace that doesn't match their impossible size. And then one of them drifts into view. The word that comes to mind is ghost. It's a colossal, gelatinous creature, almost completely translucent, pulsating with a slow, silent rhythm. It has the vague shape of a tadpole, but one the size of a minivan, its long, ethereal tail trailing off into the darkness. It doesn't seem to have eyes or a mouth in the traditional sense. It simply drifts through the crimson soup, absorbing nutrients directly through its semi-permeable skin. It is a being made of little more than water and shadow, a living phantom in the abyss. We found more of them, dozens, an entire ecosystem of these silent giants, moving like a slow-motion blizzard through the mid-ocean. We're calling them ghost larvae, and the scientific principle behind them is as fascinating as it is terrifying. In the normal deep sea, food is incredibly scarce. Most creatures have larval stages that are tiny and fleeting. The goal is to grow up as fast as possible. But here the food is endless. This endless bloom of archaea has created a super smorgasbord. These creatures are taking advantage of it in a way no one could have predicted. They are delaying their transformation, remaining in a super prolonged larval state, just eating and growing. It's a phenomenon known as larval gigantism, but taken to an evolutionary extreme we've never witnessed. They are gorging themselves on the energy of this new, alien food web, building up mass for a transformation we can barely comprehend. They aren't the main event. They are the prelude. They are living, growing cocoons. And that is the thought that settles in. A cold knot of dread and awe that chills you more than the polar water ever could. These beautiful, terrifying, ghostly things, they are just babies. They are the juvenile stage of something else. As our ROV camera lingers on one of these colossal larvae, a question hangs in the water, heavier than any physical pressure. If this is the infant, what in the world does the adult look like? And as we watch it drift purposefully downwards, into the crushing blackness below, we realize we have to follow. We have to know where it's going to hatch. To follow a ghost, you have to be prepared to enter the underworld. Our robotic probes descend, chasing the ethereal forms of the giant larvae as they drift ever downward. The pressure builds relentlessly, an invisible giant squeezing the hull of our submersible. Down here, there is no red glow, no hint of the world above. There is only absolute black, a cold so profound it feels like a physical presence, and the narrow beam of our lights cutting a lonely path through the void. The larvae are moving with a quiet purpose, drawn by some unseen signal from the planet's hidden heart. And then we reach the bottom, the seafloor. But this is no ordinary abyssal plain of mud and silt. This is a landscape that has not seen open water in 500,000 years. As the ice above melted, the sheer weight holding this part of the Earth's crust down was lifted, and the planet itself has begun to breathe. Cracks have opened in the seabed, and from them, plumes of superheated, mineral-rich water are billowing out. We've discovered a field of hydrothermal vents, a lost volcanic world that was sealed in a tomb of ice. It is a garden of impossible geology, and it is the larvae's destination. Here, in the warm, shimmering haze of the vents, the ghost larvae have gathered. They are attaching themselves to the black, volcanic rock, their translucent bodies becoming still. One by one, they are spinning a chrysalis, a pupal case, around themselves using the strange chemicals gushing from the seafloor. The scene is both horrifying and sacred. It's a nursery for monsters, nestled in the ruins of a forgotten world. The geothermal heat is providing the colossal energy needed for their final, mysterious metamorphosis. And as our ROV drifts through this silent field of giant cocoons, we realize we are in a place of imminent, awful birth. Our camera focuses on one pupa, larger than the rest, which has begun to tremble. A network of dark veins appears on its surface, and then, with a slow, sickening tear, a seam splits open. It's happening. After all the speculation, after all the questions, we are about to see the answer. The moment is filled with a terrifying, electric anticipation. Our human instinct screams to pull the ROV back, to flee. But our curiosity, that deep, insatiable need to know, holds it steady. We have to see what comes out. First, a leg emerges. It is long, jointed, and tipped with a vicious obsidian point. It looks like the leg of a crab, but impossibly large and sharp. Then another and another. A body, armored in a segmented, chitinous shell like some colossal, deep-sea trilobite, begins to haul itself out of the ruptured sac. For a moment, it looks like a nightmare arthropod, a familiar shape scaled up to monstrous proportions. But then, as it fully frees itself, something else unfurls from its underside. A nest of thick, writhing tentacles, lined with suckers that seem to intelligently test the water. It's a hybrid, a biological chimera that evolution should never have allowed. A creature with the armored body of a crustacean and the predatory intelligence of a cephalopod. And in that moment of horrified revelation, the truth crashes down on us. This isn't a new species, born from the chaos. This is an ancient one, a species that perfected the art of waiting. Their life cycle wasn't meant for a world with stable ice caps. It was designed for a planet of flux. The larvae could drift for geological ages, dormant, until the precise signal was given. We thought the melting of the ice was a catastrophe, a tragedy of our own making. But for them, it was just a signal. The alarm clock that just went off for a species that went to sleep long before humans ever existed. Just when you think the story has reached its peak of horror, the planet throws a curveball. The birth of these ancient monsters from the deep seems like the final act, the ultimate consequence of our actions. But the Earth's systems are more complex and more savage than we can imagine. The colossal flood of cold, fresh meltwater pouring into the salty North Atlantic doesn't just raise sea levels. It's a poison arrow shot into the heart of the ocean's circulatory system. The great currents, the conveyor belts that carry warmth around the globe, begin to sputter and fail. And this triggers a paradox of terrifying proportions. The great thaw leads to a great, brutally fast freeze. But this isn't the ice we knew. It's not the flat, predictable sheet of the old Arctic. This is something new, a chaotic, dynamic hellscape. Imagine a labyrinth of ice, constantly grinding and shifting. Jagged spires of frozen freshwater the size of buildings tear through slushy fields that act like quicksand. Under the surface, it's a maze of dark, freezing tunnels and dead ends. It's a world in constant, violent motion, a death trap for any creature accustomed to the old rules. It seems like the final, sterile capstone on a dead pole, a place where no life could possibly survive. And yet, life finds a way. As our drones skim the surface of this treacherous new world, they find signs of it. Breathing holes, but not the simple circles made by seals. These are intricate networks of openings, connected by tunnels carved with what looks like intention. Following them, we discover the descendants of the very creatures we thought were doomed, seals or perhaps walruses, but not as we remember them. Evolution has been put on fast forward. They are sleeker, more powerful, with claws hardened for gripping and carving ice, and a layer of blubber so efficient it can withstand the new cold. They are no longer just surviving in this chaos. They are mastering it. They have become ice architects. We watch in stunned silence as they work in coordinated groups, using their bodies and powerful breaths to melt and shape the slush. They push and compact ice fragments, building walls and barriers. They carve decoys and dead-end corridors into the shifting ice fields. This isn't just instinct. It's engineering. It's a form of emergent environmental intelligence that has blossomed in just a few generations, forged in the crucible of this impossible new landscape. Why would they build such a complex, deadly maze? The answer rises from the depths. The labyrinth isn't just a home. It's a hunting trap. As the giant arthropod cephalopod horrors ascend from the volcanic vents, drawn towards the surface, they are funneled into these icy canyons. Their massive, rigid bodies are not built for navigating such tight, shifting spaces. We watch as one of the ancient monsters becomes wedged in a narrow channel, and the architects descend upon it. It's a battle of titans. The ancient horror from the abyss versus the new, hyper-intelligent masters of the ice. The story has taken another unbelievable turn. We thought we had unleashed an unstoppable monster, but the planet, in its chaotic response, has created an antibody. A new form of intelligence, born from the survivors of the old world, has risen to challenge the horrors of the even older one. The polar north is no longer a melting wasteland. It has become an arena, and as we watch this primal war unfold, we are left to wonder which is more awe-inspiring, and which is more terrifying. The monster from the darkness below, or the one that learned to think in a world of ice. It's time to pull back, to zoom out from the individual battles in the ice maze and the strange glow of the deep. When we look at the grand picture, what do we see? The polar regions of our planet are no longer a static, silent desert of white. The old world is gone. In its place is a new world, a dynamic, terrifying, and wondrous battleground. It is an ecosystem running on a completely different operating system, one written in a language of ancient archaea and hyperevolution. This isn't chaos. It's a new, brutal, and breathtakingly complete order. At the heart of this new order is a war. It's a war between the deep past and the immediate future. The ancient horrors, the arthropod cephalopod chimeras, rise from the geothermal nurseries on the seafloor, driven by an instinct millions of years old. They are the apex predators of a world that no longer exists. They ascend into the shifting labyrinth of the ice architects, the hyper-intelligent descendants of modern seals. It is a constant, savage struggle. The monsters learn to navigate the mazes, and the architects, in turn, devise more intricate and deadly traps. It is a planetary-scale arms race of intelligence, a gruesome and magnificent dance between the hunter and the hunted. And what fuels this endless war? The Crimson Tide. The foundation of this entire, bizarre system is the alien bloom of red archaea. It pulses with a sinister, bioluminescent rhythm, a constant, inexhaustible energy source for this new world. It feeds the ghost larvae, providing the fuel for the birth of the abyssal horrors. But it also supports the rest of the food web, the strange fish and invertebrates that the ice architects themselves prey upon when they are not fighting for their lives. The glowing red ocean has become the lifeblood, the very sun, for a world that has embraced the darkness. Think about the sheer, shocking speed of it all. The evolution we learned about in textbooks took place over eons, a slow geological process of trial and error. What we are witnessing here is something else entirely. It's a violent, revolutionary change, compressed into a handful of centuries, perhaps even decades. The planet didn't just break under the strain of our influence. It mutated. It unleashed dormant potentials and accelerated natural selection to a fever pitch, creating a world that is both a nightmare and a miracle of resilience. The Earth isn't a fragile victim. It is a terrifyingly creative and adaptive system. So where do we fit in? We were the catalyst. We were the ones who turned the key in the ancient lock and woke the slumbering giants. Our actions set this entire cascade of events into motion. Yet, in this new north, there is no place for us. We are aliens here more so than the creatures themselves. Our technology allows us to be remote voyeurs, watching through the eyes of our drones and submersibles. We are ghosts at the feast, peering into a drama we started but can never join, a world fundamentally and lethally hostile to our own biology. We broke the old world, and in its place, a new one. A world of monsters, mazes, and a fierce, alien intelligence has risen. As we look on, watching the satellite feeds of a pole that now glows with a strange red light, where massive, dark shapes move within the shifting ice, we have to ask ourselves a final, humbling question. In this future we have created, are we the explorers, charting the unknown, or are we just the ghosts,